What's up, everyone? It's your girl Shay here. Welcome to my channel if you are new, and welcome back to my channel if you've been here before. And as you can see by the title of today's video, this is a video that I've been meaning to make for a while, and that is me talking about Archive of Your Own, or A03 as a lot of other people like to call it. And pretty much what A03 is, it is a fan fiction site. And I actually made a video maybe like 2 years ago, maybe 2.5 years ago, where I talked about which one was better, Wattpad or fanfiction.net, and a lot of people actually suggested for me to check out Archive of Our Own, or A03, which I'm going to continue to call it A03. And I decided why not to check it out, and I've been checking it out for a while. I think like last year I had actually made an account on there, but over the past few months I've been using it a lot more often. So I figured it's about time for me to make this video about my pros and cons about A03. Now, I do want to tell you guys that this is my own personal opinion about A03, so please do not feel like I'm coming for you if I don't say things that you like about A03. So once again, this is going to be a pro and con video, and I'm sure at some point I am going to do a video where I am comparing Wattpad, fanfiction.net, and A03 all together for me to see if my preferences have changed about which one I prefer more, because I think in that video I can't really remember which one I preferred more. I think I said fanfiction.net, but let's get started with this video on the pros and cons of A03. I'm going to start with the cons first, because why not end this video on a positive note? So I'm going to start with the cons. So I do have them all here written on my phone, so let's get started in this video. So starting with the cons, the first con I have on here is the account creating process. And that's because it is a longer process. Not so much that creating the account takes a long time, but getting your account approved takes a long time. So when I created an account, it told me I had to wait like 24 to 48 hours before my account was actually approved, which to me kind of sucks. Like I feel like they should have just sent out an email that then said like, hey, to confirm your account, click this link, like a lot of like services pretty much do. But having to wait for the administrator or whoever's in charge of the site to then approve your account, just to me is just a hassle. So I feel like that is a process that should change, and that's why I put it on my cons list. The second one is that on the mobile site, there is no way to change your preferences, as far as I know of, to make it where the screen is how you want it. So for me personally, whenever I read fan fiction, I like to read it with a black screen and white text. For me, that just makes it a lot easier to see. And the only way I can do that on A03 using their mobile site is if I put it into showing the reader view, which doesn't always happen with stories. Like sometimes it'll let me press it and it'll show up perfectly fine, and it'll show me the black text on a white screen. The white text on a black screen, but that's only due to my phone preferences, but it doesn't show it all the time. So like some chapters will let me do it, some chapters it won't, some stories it will, some stories it won't. So for me, I just wish that there was a way to automatically change that preference on the mobile side, where I don't have to do like a show reader view. Similar to like, I know with fanfiction.net, they kind of have that kind of thing already set up. So I kind of wish they had that for A03. Also, there's no way to save your favorite stories. So a lot of us, I know for me personally, whenever I read a fanfic, I like to save it for me to either go back and read it later on in the future, if it's like a story that I'm like, hey, I want to reread this, or if it's a way for me to be able to share certain fanfics that I've enjoyed and that I've loved with other people, and they're already referenced right there. On A03, they don't have that. All they have is a history feature, where it's a history of any story that you've ever clicked on, even if you didn't finish it and even if you didn't like it. So I kind of don't like that, because after a while, I feel like it'll be very convoluted if you've read a lot of stories and you're constantly having to go to each page to see what stories are actually listed there. So that I don't like. They do have a kudos button though, which I actually had at first thought was the save feature for like saving a story, or favoriting a story, I'm sorry. But it actually is just a way to give kudos to the author for that particular chapter or for that particular story. So that's the only thing that I would say I really disliked and didn't enjoy and wish that they would change. So the next con that I have is that there's no app. So for A03, they do not have a mobile app that you're able to use, which I Like I said, I wish that they had. Fanfiction.net and Wattpad both have mobile apps that you can use, and I feel like it's just so much more convenient. I do know that for A03, for a period of time, there was an app that was available in the App Store, but it wasn't actually made by A03. It was made by somebody else, and they just ripped the stories from A03. But that app is actually no longer available, nor did I like using it once I found out that it wasn't actually made by the creators of A03. But I really wish that A03 will come out with a mobile app. I just feel like using the mobile site is kind of redundant, and I feel like an app is something that I just wish that they had. I just feel like an app would just be so much more convenient, so much easier to click on. I don't have to deal with tabs in my Safari and stuff like that. And that if you're someone who still likes reading it like on Safari, then that's great. But as someone who reads off of their phone and not their laptop, an app to me would just be amazing and would be perfect. So here's the last con that I have, and the last con that I have is about the search function within A03. And that's because at first, when I first started using A03, I found the search function to be extremely confusing. Like, I feel like they had so many options that I would forget to check certain stuff or uncheck certain stuff. And it just made it to the point where it got frustrating to use, and it made it seem like I was never going to get to any stories that I actually wanted to read. So yeah, that was a con for me. So the search function is something that you have to get used to if you've never used A03 before, but definitely keep at it, because after a while you will definitely get used to it. Now on to the pros, because like I said, I'm gonna end this on a good note. And the first pro I have, which was also a con, is the search function. And I actually put this as a pro as well, only because of the fact I feel like the search function, because it is so detailed compared to other search functions on Wattpad or on fanfiction.net, that it helps you to really find what you are looking for and what you don't want. So that's why I had to put it on the pro, because once I got used to it and learned how to use it a lot better, I was able to really find what I was looking for and refine my search to where it didn't seem like I was convoluted with a whole bunch of stories that I wasn't even looking for. The second pro I have about A03 is that I feel like the writing on here is much more mature and much more adult. I feel like a lot of the stories I come across on fanfiction.net or on Wattpad aren't cringy. Some of them are cringy, yes. But I also feel like I come across a lot of stories that are like, I wrote this when I was 12, or I wrote this when I was 11. But I feel like on A03, I very rarely come across any stories like that. They seem to have more of an adult feel to them. And very rarely so far with the stories I've been reading on A03, have I had a story where the premise or the synopsis of it sounds amazing, but then when I get into reading it, I just realize it's just really, really bad. And I end up just exiting out of it. And I'm like, I don't want to read this story. So I feel like I mostly come across that on like Wattpad or fanfiction.net, but on A03, I haven't had that. A lot of stories I've came across that sounded good from the synopsis, I've actually continued to read and have ultimately loved them. The next pro that I have is that there are a lot of categories to choose from. And I feel like that is something that Wattpad has, fanfiction.net kind of has, but not completely, but that A03 has kind of the best little bit. So on A03, they have a lot of categories to choose from besides just choosing like anime or manga or books or movies. They also have like music groups, and they have like certain people. So to me, they have a lot more categories if you're looking for a specific type of fan fiction, but you want more of a mature feel compared to like Wattpad, where granted they do have all these categories, but you have to actually search for them. They're not actually listed in the categories, whereas with A03 they're actually listed under categories, which makes it, like I said, a lot more convenient and a lot more easier to find. So I love that they have a lot of categories. So that was definitely a pro for me. So the last and final pro that I have is one where I do like that for the links within the archive warnings, where it gives you what the pairings they have or some of the warnings that for things that are in the story itself, that you can click on the particular pairings and it can link you to more pairings of that are very similar or the same for that particular individual or however, and you can find more stories that are just like that. I really like that they included that in there, because now you don't have to actually search for that particular pairing. You could just click on that archive warning and it'll take you to more stories. Now I know the archive warning thing sounds kind of weird, but this is just an interesting way, or just a way to let the individual know who comes across the story, like, hey, These are the parents involved, and these are the type of topics that will be discussed in this story. So if you don't like it, you don't have to read it, but it's also a way of like, hey, if this is something you're more so interested in, click on it and it'll link you to more stories. So yeah, that is my last pro that I have for A03. Now I do know that I feel like I had more cons than I had pros for A03, which isn't a bad thing. I know some people are like, oh, you have more cons, that means you hated it. No, I actually really do like A03. It's just that the cons more so for me are things that affected in some ways not the readability, but some of the changes that I wish were implemented on the site, not so much the stories itself or so much like the just like feedback that I wish that the site would change, but the pros itself was definitely more so about my experience with using what they currently have already on A03. So do I overall recommend using A03? Yes, if you're someone that enjoys fan fiction and you want more to your fan fiction that fanfiction.net's not giving you, or Wattpad just seems a little bit more teenager-ish, then I definitely suggest checking out A03. You definitely won't regret it. Granted, it will take you a little bit to get used to it compared to the other two, but once you stick with it, you will definitely love it. You will definitely enjoy it. So yeah, this video is getting kind of long a little bit, so I'm gonna end it here. Of course, I have links below to all my social media accounts. I have an Instagram, I have a Twitter, and I also have a TikTok. Feel free to check me out all on there. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up and please subscribe if you haven't already. And yeah, I'll see you guys soon with a brand new video. Like I always tell you guys, stay positive, stay nerdy, and in today's day and age, stay healthy, and of course, please stay safe. All right, you guys, bye.